In this episode, we sat down with productivity guru Ari Meisel. Ari's company provides organizations with amazing insights to optimize, automate, and outsource their business processes.
We always start with optimize first and looking at what we can just get rid of or what we can change about what we're using or what we don't need to use anymore. So I always want to look at doing the most we can with what we have now. And part of the reason for that too is that I always say that I am tool agnostic, right? I don't ever want somebody to think that they need to invest in some software or have some gadget or something in order to be productive. Everything that I teach is a mindset and a method. And so optimize really is that, because there's no optimization that involves signing up for Infusionsoft, right? Like that wouldn't be an optimization at all. So we always start with that. And then what I inevitably find is that when we optimize properly, you break something down into those bite-sized chunks, the automation actually becomes really obvious, right? So like if you break down a process for posting to social media, at some point in that process, you're going to say, well, post this to Facebook, and now post this to Twitter, and now post it to LinkedIn. And looking at that, even with very, very basic automation knowledge, you have to be able to say like, well, there must be a way to like combine, like there has to be something that exists for that. So a problem that a lot of people run into that we see all the time is that they come to me with the solution rather than the problem, right? And so to me, it's the same idea of, you see an ad for medicine on the TV, right? And you go to your doctor like, I need that thing. It's like, well, no, you should go to the doctor with the issue that you're having, and then they can tell you what medicine you should be taking, right? So rather than somebody being like, I saw this automation tool, like I want to use it, right? The better thing to do is optimize it, figure out what you actually need to do, and then find a tool that does that thing. That's always a challenge that we have to deal with people, is they always want to have that tool first and then like shoehorn it into dealing with what they have to deal with. So we always start with the optimize first, then we look at automation, and then outsourcing is always the last step, because I know that anytime you involve people, no matter what, when you involve people, you're taking the process down a notch. It's just the way it is. The human factor will always lower the efficiency of any process as far as I'm concerned. However, the value that you get out of it from using some sort of really great outsource provider is going to be greater. But in terms of pure efficiency and in terms of numbers and time spent and dollars spent, I do everything I can to avoid outsourcing, which is an important point for me, because I outsource thousands of things every month, and that is with me trying to avoid outsourcing. So imagine the people who don't, they're just like, we'll just find someone to do it. And then they end up spending money and time that doesn't go anywhere.
Right. And how do you get people to not rely on you wholeheartly? Because I can imagine that. I know myself, I went that direction first.
Yeah. So, there's those three things, right? There's three ways of doing things: do it yourself, done with you, and then done for you. And I've always been more of a fan of the done with you approach. I think that the done for you stuff can make people a lot of money, but I think it just creates a lot of headaches. And there's something to be said for not accommodating clients in a business, because as soon as you accommodate people, you degrade your processes, right? Because then you're doing customizations and you're offering special things, and we'll change the price this way this time. And the truth is that if you have a great process, the value is there. So for you to make any sort of accommodation is going to take away from that value, as far as I'm concerned. So that's sort of like the philosophical look at that. But the other thing is that I've just seen the lack of results the other way, because if you don't have a team or a founder that understand the why, right, of why we're doing these things and the how, and like they need to have some sort of understanding, then you're just giving them a shiny object that will maybe work for a little while and eventually will probably not work. And even more so, you can almost guarantee that at some point there will be frustrations with any of these tools that we use. And if the founder or the team doesn't understand why we're using it, then they'll just be like, all right, well, we hit a roadblock, let's try something else. That's why you have teams all the time that say like, we tried Trello, we didn't like it. It's like, well, you probably didn't use it right. Or we tried Slack, but the team hated it. They don't want to use it. It's like, well, they don't understand why you're trying to do that then, and you haven't conveyed that properly. So we can't do that with done for you. There's just no way. There's no way to say like, all right, we're going to set up all these automations, they're going to run, and then the one day it breaks, everyone will be like, well, the automation guy screwed up again, right? So I think there's just so much more impact to be had by teaching, not to use the cliche, but teaching someone how to fish rather than just giving them the fish.
Yep. The other thing I find unique working with you is your team is spread out. How do you keep them, and you just add another person, so how do you keep them motivated? I understand how the productivity piece works, right? Because you can see the activity in the processes that you build, but how do you keep the culture so high and keep them excited and enthusiastic without having those real-time collisions?
Because we have a culture of replaceability, right? And to me, that's been the crux of our culture. So when I started, when I sort of started the company a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I had 7 people working for me, and all sorts of different roles. And a lot of it was them sort of figuring out what those roles were going to be on their own. And a bit of survival of the fittest, to be honest, the way that it was set up. And within, I think it was the first 8 or 9 months or so, our first person replaced himself. And with replaceability, I always say that we want to replace everybody in the organization or make everybody in the organization more replaceable so that we can replace them up, not out, and the entire organization elevates in that way. Over the course of several more months, the team got down to 3 people. I didn't fire people. Like, this was a natural order of things that happened. They replaced their own jobs to the point that they didn't recognize or they didn't see upward mobility for themselves. And everything that they were doing had been optimized, automated, and outsourced. So there was no place for them to go. It was sort of a natural parting almost anyway. And we now added somebody else onto the team, which we've been a team of 4 people for a really long time. And now we have this 5th person that's come on for the first time because we sort of settled at this natural plateau where we can now grow from. So this just came up and really illustrates the sort of answer to the question. My writer on my team, Amy, just recently had a sort of a struggle with this. And when we brought on our newest team member, that changed some of the way that we do marketing. And Amy was starting to write things that she didn't enjoy writing. It was just a lot of marketing stuff, sales copy, things like that. And I could see it coming. I could see that she was getting frustrated with this. And I sort of like let it foment. And then she sent me a message one day and she said, I think that I really, maybe you should cut back my hours and maybe pay me less because I don't need to be doing this kind of thing. I don't like doing this kind of thing. And we had a call and went through it. And I said, I guess it's been a while since you've had to replace anything because you seem to have forgotten that this is what we do. If you don't like doing something, figure out a way not to do it.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so I guess it sparked a remembering bulb or something. But so the point of that was, it's not about you doing less. You should still be getting paid and doing the hours you're doing because you're brilliant and you bring a lot of value to what we do. The things that you don't like doing, you should be delegating, optimizing, outsourcing, and automating below you. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's the only way that we can elevate those people. They have to be able to delegate and use all those tools to remove the things that they're doing. So that culture of constant sort of replaceability, it's not meant to create fear that, tomorrow you could lose your job. It's meant to create the motivation that you should be in a place where you're never doing things that you don't like doing. And I don't think that there's a lot of workplaces that have that as an offering.
The fear is, how do I get the productivity out of people, right? If I don't have that old school pound on my fist on the desk. But the reality is, if the processes are in place, you can see the cadence of the task getting completed.
And there's also, people have to understand there's a difference in productivity, efficiency, and effectiveness. Productivity is just producing more. Efficiency is producing more with less. And effectiveness is producing the right things. And I always want people to be as effective as possible.
One of the things I admire about you, and the question I really, really am dying to hear the answer to is this: you have a interesting, you have an interesting lifestyle. Obviously, you have 4 kids. They're all real young. You've got a busy lifestyle. You're even the one that says, hey, I don't even have a schedule to my day. The way my day is scheduled is basically when the kids get up, the day begins, right? How do you, because you have this very interesting way to dive right into the details, whether we're at an event with you or even just in a conversation with you, and I imagine it's the same thing here. How do you get into focus at the level that you do to get all the processes going? And then how do you allow yourself to check out of the process so that you can go do the things that you need to get done as a father?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something that I've really tried to focus on in my ability to do that over time, and it definitely was a struggle at times, not so much to transition from family to work, but from work to family. And there is something actually known as attention residue, which is one of the reasons that multitasking doesn't exist. When we switch tasks, there is a part of our attention that stays with the old task. It's called attention residue, and it makes it really hard to truly focus on what you're doing. So one of the things is just as a force of habit, because I do my work while the kids are at school, my brain, my body, everything has sort of gotten attuned to that work period. So a bit of it is just that repetition and sort of pounding it in. I don't break with my rules of scheduling calls, meetings, and things like that. I don't make exceptions and do a call with someone at 4 o'clock. You know, if somebody's on the West Coast and can't do a call with me in the morning, then I'll end up doing a call at 9 o'clock at night, and that's fine because kids are asleep. Like, it's sort of the end of the thing. But it's always been tempting to do that. I mean, I just today scheduled a call with somebody who is a very big deal in the marketing space, and he was asking if I could have a call next Saturday, and I said, no, I can't, because I don't do that, and it's fine, and we're going to talk the Monday after. You know, and I know that I've had to say no to opportunities because of that, and that's been okay, because if nothing else, I don't want to have to make decisions that I don't need to make, right? And so either if it's happening during these hours, then it's okay, and if it's not, then it's not. And just, I don't know, getting in that mode has just been really, really helpful. The other thing is that when I get home with the kids from school, I put my phone in my office and it's there for the next 5 hours or so, you know, and I'll check it later in the day. But I just don't have it on me because it would take my attention, and I know that. Yep. So I just have my environment, and also my office is in a closet over there. You know,
I noticed that.
Yeah, which is my recording booth, basically. I mean, I can sort of work wherever I want, but it's in a compartment. It's in a box, right? It's in a physical box for me. And I close the door, and it's there. And you just, again, it's just a habitual thing. Like, those are the environmental triggers that come into play when I'm doing one activity versus another. But then the other thing is that, fortunately for me, my peak time is between 10 and noon. You know, for some people it's 11 o'clock at night, 3 in the afternoon. It could be it's very different for different people, but for me, very fortunately, it is like right in the middle of what that work day is for me. So it's really easy for me to get into that mode, take full advantage of that 2-hour or 90-minute period or so, and then come out of that. And my work day starts, and I have a sort of like slow transition into my peak time, and then I have a bit of a slow transition out. And then the last thing, though, for me is I'm a particularly high-level audible learner, and music for me is a really important sort of trigger. I have a playlist that I just always listen to when it's like 40 songs or so on Spotify, and it's, you know, pretty repetitive, but that's what I listen to when I'm working, and I don't listen to that when I'm not. Interesting.
So how do you get the residue away? So when you're coming out of the closet?
Yeah. So what I try to do is create some sort of buffer activity, if I can, between the work and the family stuff. With the family to work, it's different because that's easier, right? Like, I have a meeting scheduled at 9 o'clock, drop the kids off at 8:55, like I can go right into the meeting, yeah. And there's other people and I'm gonna have a conversation. It's not dependent on me. But the transition back into family is dependent on me. So that's why I'll try to, I'll do a workout or something, you know, when work ends, before I go get the kids.
Oh, that's smart.
Or read a book or something like that. But there usually has to be some sort of buffer activity. It's a lot harder for me to get off a call, pick up the kids, because then I'm processing the call.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, great. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Really?
Yeah, that's great.
Christian, we need to do that. We should do that tonight.
Yes.
Like, that's an awesome way to do it.